will you be able to introduce our guest speaker? You read the write-up you had.
Oh, sorry. Oh yeah. Let me introduce her. Just give me a minute. So our speaker today is called Ivy, Madam Ivy Sambigi. I hope I said the name correct. And she's a physiologist, passionate about mental health and substance abuse and rehabilitation. And she's also the center manager at Christ, the Good Shepherd Wellness Center, Kamwenja in Nyeri. So Madam Ivy, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can, Irene.
So the floor is yours now. You can take us through. I know we are presenting on emotions and mental health,
Yes.
and you can take us through the 1 hour now.
All right, thank you very much. I'm experiencing a bit of a technical hitch. Probably you could help me share the screen.
Yeah, just 1 minute.
So as she shares, I want to make a slight correction. I'm not a physiologist, but a psychologist.
Is that visible?
Yes. Thank you very much. So today we're going to talk about emotions and mental health. But now, before we get to the mental health bit, it's right to just ask, what are emotions? Are they just feelings? What exactly? So my definition is quite simple. It's a reaction to, so anyone who has a question, you could please type it on the chat or hold it for the end, till the end, sorry. I'll be able to respond to them.
Okay, I will disallow unmuting. Yes, so anyone who wants to speak will put up their hands or put a text in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederick. So as we were saying, emotions are any reaction to whatever situation or event that happens. But now, most of us tend to react based on what the brain understands the situation to be. What I mean is, for example, here is an example of Ivy and Mary. Ivy gets a promotion, but instead of being happy, she becomes isolated, anxious, very worried. But on the other hand, here is Mary, who gets a promotion and is very excited, very happy to actually get to a higher level in life. The difference between those two is that one is experiencing negative emotions, while the next one is positive. And all this is based from past experiences. So as you can see, we have two personalities there from the screen shared. One is reacting differently from the other. And as we go on, we look at factors that affect emotions. The next slide, please, Frederick.
So I'm Mutieno, Paul Peter.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry for that. Yes, Otieno. So there are very many things that usually affect us emotionally. The first one being matters biology. So when we talk about biology, we are talking about the hormones or chemicals in the brain. So first and foremost, you find that hormones, most of the time when you are feeling stressed or when you want to feel good, there are some people who eat too much, some people will exercise, some people will use substances, people will just do things that will make them feel happy, or there are people who will actually do something different that will harm themselves. But it's basically because any activity we take part in will produce chemicals in the brain. So if it's a positive action, you get feel good hormones, they make you feel good. If it's on the contrary, it makes you feel suppressed and very depressed. So as you can see, the two things will be affected. You'll either feel good about the situation or yourself, or bad. The second factor that affects a person is the psychology. When we talk about psychology, we are dealing with personalities, whereby you find there are some people who are, for purposes of people understanding, because I understand we have different categories of individuals, I'll just use layman's language. So we have people who are carefree. Some are very, very, how do I put it? Organized. So you'd find there are people, you see, most of the time you'd find when you're trying to share a joke with a person, they'll read too much into the joke that they won't get it. And then there's someone you'll tell a very plain statement and they laugh and you're left wondering what exactly. So the state of mind is based on the personality of this individual. Then again, there's the learned responses still under the psychology. We are taught how to respond to issues, which also means our emotions will be greatly affected. For example, your thoughts. When you're too happy, contain yourself. When you laugh too much, or rather when you celebrate too much, you're boasting. So you find that this person will be in a very confused state. They won't be able to express themselves as they should. Then third is the environment. The environment could consist of illnesses or any emotional stressors. Yes, still there. I hope we are together. As you can see on that image there, I don't know whether you're able to zoom in, Otieno. No, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you very much. So we can move to the next slide. So the effects of emotions. There are so many things that we get when we are in that emotional state. And most of the time, we are not able to get to a state of balance. So how do we experience the effects of emotions? One, we might be unable to concentrate. You try to do your work, you try to finish a task, but you find that you can't really focus on whatever you're doing. Secondly, you might find there's irritability. Anything or anyone, just everything disturbs anything disturbs your presence. So you find that it's very difficult to stay put. You can be easily distracted. That's another thing. Whatever you try to do, unaacha katikati, you find yourself doing another thing before you finish your statement. Even when you're conversing with someone, you find that when you're in a statement, katikati, you forget what you were saying, or you even just deviate without noticing. We suffer from poor sleep patterns or sleeping issues. It's usually experienced in different ways. There are people who sleep very well at night but wake up very early. There are people who try to sleep but they end up sleeping late into the night because they were not able to rest. Then again, there are people who keep waking up in the middle of the night without any particular issue. So if you realize you have one of these things, then you need some intervention. Some of us, you'd find that there are moments you've slept for a very long time, but then again, you get tired easily, or you wake up feeling tired after having slept. Sometimes you just can't explain. Your muscles are very tensed. Unasikia tu mwili, it's painful. Every part of you is aching, but you can't really tell why. Then there's anxiety. Anxiety is basically a state of kushinda tu umebabaika. Some people experience this wakisweat mikono. Some people just feel that they don't have a good breathing capacity. Then depression. How do you realize that you have depression? You find that you're lacking interest in anything. You feel very low. You feel you don't have any motivation to do anything, any hobbies that you used to do. If you liked listening to music, now it sounds like noise, or ata iko lakini you're not hearing anything. So those are points to look into. Then you might find yourself with difficulties managing stress. You feel that you're constantly overwhelmed with issues in life, but you don't really know how to deal with them. Then lastly, another effect of emotion. Note, I'm talking about the negative effects of emotions. Last but not least would be substance abuse. Due to that, I'm sure you can see all those anxiety, depression, headache, all these things. Most of us turn towards substances so that we can medicate. If I'm feeling bad, maybe I'll take my drug of choice, then I'll feel better, or it will silence all that emotion. So let's move to the next slide, please. So having known the effects of our emotions, now we understand. So this is what I am suffering from. And now we need to be in tune with them. But why? If you can see there, now you're putting pieces together so that you can understand and create a better way of living. So being in tune with your emotions will help in better decision making. That is, remember you're anxious, remember there's all those things that are blocking your brain from functioning, blocking you from being still. So when you're in tune with whatever you're doing, you'll be able to break it down and make a better decision. Again, we could also find successful relationships. Relationships are in very different categories. There's the intimate, there's just platonic friendship, there's interpersonal between you and someone else. So there are different relationships. Once you're in tune with your emotions, you're able to deal with different people with different personalities and backgrounds, but then maintaining a very stable state of mind. Then again, our daily interactions, we understand that day-to-day events cannot stop. So being in tune with our emotions also help us to interact, to do our daily routines better. Then lastly, there is self-care. Once you're in tune with your emotions, you'll be able to take care of yourself better by engaging in activities that you need to work on and all that. So now when we go back to the, sorry for that. Thank you. So when you go back to that part, you realize we talked about the, please go back to the effects of emotions. Yes. So you'd find having been in tune with your emotions, you'll realize you're keeping stock of whatever you're doing. If I'm in an office setup or if I'm interacting with someone, I'll realize today I'm very irritable. Therefore, I'll have better ways of communication. So when you're irritable, you could find ways of dealing with it. One, we call it distractions. First and foremost, you can sip some water as you talk. You realize there are some moments we can be in a meeting or we are talking to people. Sometimes the individual that you're talking to, you can't help but have to stay there and finish your business with them before leaving. You can't necessarily walk out. So what happens is you develop mechanisms of talking better or calling in mediators. A mediator is someone who helps us to communicate with the other person, or in case there's a conflict, someone who will help to be the neutral ground. Again, if I'm experiencing poor sleep patterns or sleep issues, I will find ways. For example, exercising. We talked about feel-good hormones. So exercising will help your body just relax. Again, we also need to realize our emotions are also in touch with matters self-care that we mentioned. We need, that means a well-balanced meal. There's the exercising. There's just general grooming and hobbies as well. Then again, when we talk about the anxiety, depression, most of the time we react from past experiences. And that's when we have the likes of Catherine, who are character coaches. We have psychologists. Sometimes you might find that you're actually suffering from an underlying issue, such as a mental health condition that basically prevents you from living, quote unquote, a normal life. So if you're put on the right medication or given the right therapy, you'll be able to manage your emotions. At the moment, we are suffering from a very big crisis of clinical depression. I'm calling it clinical because most of the time utapata mtu anashikwa na stress kidogo anasema, I'm stressed. I feel depressed. I feel this and this. And sometimes we tend to magnify the condition without necessarily understanding what exactly is ailing us. So finding the therapy will be part of being in tune. Then again, we might also need the therapist to take us through noting the underlying issues. Being in tune with our emotions also helps us note underlying issues. Because you might find that if, for example, Otieno, I had an issue with you, if I was going through therapy, I would realize that it's not Otieno per se, but how Otieno speaks to me might be reflecting how my father used to speak to me. So I'm reacting to Otieno based on he as the mirror effect of my father, as an example. Yeah. Then again, substance use. How do we tell? We tend to move towards our drug of choice. So first and foremost, tunasikia mtu anakuambia, when I take a sip of wine or I take a sip of whatever it is, I feel relaxed. But what we forget is we might feel relaxed for the first few minutes, then later on, without noticing or without knowing it, I'm now consuming and drowning in the bottle. And now the emotions become scattered all over the place. Till there, Otieno, I hope we're okay.
Should I move on?
Yes, please. Yes, so now we're talking about how to control our emotions. We started by understanding what are emotions. Then we moved to the effects of these emotions so that we realize what exactly is, how exactly do I react to situations. Then we went to being in tune with our emotions. Lastly, we need to learn how to control our emotions. So how do we do that? First and foremost, we take action, and the action will be reflected on the key areas that are impacted. So you look at, for example, I use the example of Otieno and I not being in good terms, always conflicting. But then I understood that I react to Otieno because of my past experience with my father. So if I take action and go for example, there's the therapy, I'll be able to take care of my conflicts. That means I'll have better conflict resolution skills. Secondly, if I ever meet with anyone else like Otieno, in the form of anyone else like a female, I'll be in a better position to deal with that situation. So when you take a look at the impact of your emotions, towards people or towards situations we are able to deal with to impact our interpersonal relationships. So first and foremost, we've talked about dealing with conflicts. Again, we have difficulty relating with others. Remember, we talked about personalities. If I am a melancholic or a sanguine or an introvert or an extrovert, whichever person I have discovered myself to be, I will understand how to accommodate the other people better and how to not be selfish, or rather how not to be domineering if I am a very strong character. That way we are able to coexist. There's again the issue of reducing trouble. Trouble could be either at work or at school for those who are still doing their studies. We are able to understand what exactly is the problem. The trouble at work could be because my personality is not necessarily geared towards anything that is fixated on me staying. So you find that I am very bored. If it's at work, I get very bored sitting on one place. Makes me underperform, and my lack of performing makes me either skive work or get fired. So in that relation, when I understand my situation at that moment and the emotions I go through, I'm able to tailor make my tasks to be more engaging, more fun, and to make me more present at work as opposed to just looking forward to leaving. The second part is aim for regulation, not repression or suspension. Now, what is repression? Repression happens in our subconscious, our unconscious part. Suppression happens in our conscious. What do I mean? I might unintentionally ignore the fact, for example, the conflict between Otieno and I ignore the fact that underneath, I am fighting with Otieno because of underlying issues. But then when it comes to this other part of suppression, Otieno might be very domineering, and instead of communicating and saying, I don't like the way you're doing 1, 2, 3, or I am not comfortable with how we interact, or could we please just find a common ground so that we stop fighting and have more performances happen. Instead of doing that, I choose to keep quiet. And by the end of the day, I find myself feeling hurt, losing my ground, and just lost. So you find that's the difference between suppression and repression. Repression is just subconscious. You try to forget. But suppression is being aware of whatever is happening, but being quiet about it. So you find the areas that are impacted, if I don't deal with this issue and I repress or suppress, I will suffer from anxiety. These are moments where you find you walk into a workplace, for example, Otieno being my boss, and I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what will happen. I'm constantly aware of our fights. So the environment itself makes me very tensed, and I keep feeling anxious. Nikimwona tu nababaika. The thought of yeye kukua hapo, nasikia tu nimebabaika. So I'm not able to actually even concentrate. The other one would be depression that we talked about, because now I feel like I have not accomplished anything. I'll never amount to anything good. Suppressing anything will mean that by the end of the day, I am not happy with my work at all. So by the end of the day, I don't really feel happy, and I feel hopeless wherever I am. That also comes to matters, relationships and all. The sleep issues. Of course, by the time we're going to sleep issues can also manifest in terms of nightmares or dreams. So therapists will understand, for example, this is Ivy who was asleep and dreamt of an elephant chasing her. So you come back to this ground and you realize Otieno is the elephant because, I'm sorry, Otieno, I keep using you as an example, but I hope it's okay. Yeah. So you'd find Otieno is a constant issue in my life. And I honestly feel like he's one big problem that I cannot overcome. So what happens is when I'm in my dream, since I'm always running away from issues related to Otieno, in my dream, Otieno is chasing me as an elephant. Sometimes you'd find that I am afraid of making choices based on, you remember we said emotions can be from past experiences. Maybe every time I did something, I was punished. So as I grew up, I never got the chance to start initiating things or communicating my ideas. So when it comes to this moment, you find everything is just shut down. Again, there's the muscle tension. Most of us don't understand the muscle tension, but how do you actually understand and realize that you have them? Si kuchoka tu. You don't come from work and say, leo nasikia nimechoka. Or you wake up and you say, yesterday must have been a long day. You might actually realize that your muscles are tensed through a very simple exercise. And yeah, you can see we have some time. So everyone, wherever you are, please just find a position where you can sit upright with your legs grounded. Make sure that your knees are forming the 90-degree angle. Then place your hands, the palm of your hands, place them on your thighs. Following instructions. Yeah. Then now that you have an upright position, just try and still all the noise inside and outside. And while you're at it, try and take a deep, slow breath. Just breathe in. Now hold. Breathe out as you open your mouth, let the air get out. Thank you very much. So 90% of us, if you constantly do that, you'll realize that every single day, no matter how good your day turned out to be, there's always that element of being stressed out. And stress has been magnified through all our points as we went through. But if you continuously do the breathing exercise, you'll be able to relax before you sleep or in the morning before you take your roles for the day. So sometimes you'd also feel the pain. The pain might come as a psychological pain. Now I'm here to address anyone who has ever had a funny pain, but ukienda kwa hospitali, you're told you're very much okay. First and foremost, our bodies respond to the pain that we felt either in the past or the pain because our muscles have been tensed long enough. I hope I'm communicating. We feel the pain because of past experiences or because our muscles have been tensed long enough. That means you might have experienced something 10 years, 20 years ago, but start feeling unexplainable pain right now, 20 years later. But if you don't get in tune with the effects and the current status of your emotions, it's going to be difficult to understand. Then again, now we have the issue of difficulty managing stress. Basically, there are people who really get affected and have to have medication to stabilize them enough to even get them through therapy. What does this mean? It means, it doesn't mean you have failed, and it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means, similar to a car, the way it has to go back to the garage, it's time for you to go back to the garage and have some parts of you rehabilitated. And when I say rehabilitated, I mean taken back to its original state or better than it was. Then lastly, we are going to talk about the physical and emotional outbursts as part of impacts of our emotions towards people. So one, there are people who suppress or repress. We mentioned that. What happens is it's like a balloon. Today you're told something, you keep it in. You've blown the balloon. Tomorrow someone hit you, you didn't respond. You blow the balloon again. The next day, Otieno does something to you, you've blown the balloon. By the end of the day, the balloon will reach its elasticity point, and before you know it, it will explode. That's exactly what happens to we as human beings. The more you hold things in, and most of the time tunasemanga ni life, ni maisha, hivyo ndio kuko, but we are holding it in, and then by tomorrow Zakayo is taxing everything, including houses and vehicles. So what happens? We were waiting for Zakayo to burst that balloon. It was the last thing that we could wait for to blow the whole thing. So yeah, before I add anything, I think I could take questions and answers. Yes, I can see. Is suppress the same as suspension? No, suspension means imeelea mahali. It's hanging somewhere. But if I'm to use layman's language, enye imehang, sababu ulienda ukaihang mahali, ukangoja ukaihang tena, ukangoja ukahang. So in layman's Sheng terminologies, yes, we can say.
Yeah, because it's written here repression or suspension. So and I heard you talking about suppress. So
Oh,
I
sorry.
wanted to be sure.
It's
Yeah.
a typing error. Sorry.
Oh,
Suppression.
okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Yes. Okay. And have enabled people? Oh, so I can stop sharing.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
okay.
you can stop sharing. Now, I have enabled people to unmute. So whoever has a question or a comment, you can unmute and speak up. Yes, about those emotions, controlling them, regulating. So regulation is part of how to control.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so questions or comments, additions, subtractions. See, we are a good number.
There's a question by Irene. What are some ways of self-regulation?
All right, thank you very much. So how do we self-regulate? One, explaining our emotions. But it's not, I am feeling bad. I feel, you need to get to the depth of exactly what you're feeling. I feel confused. I feel hurt. I feel hopeless. That way, once you explain the exact word that describes your emotion at that moment, you can be able to understand, okay, why do you feel hurt? I feel hurt because Omondi has talked to me in an aggressive way. So why do you feel that Omondi was aggressive? I feel Omondi speak. So once you break it down by asking it's a step by step. So you start by explaining exactly by finding the word that describes your emotion. Once you describe the emotion, we try to understand, where exactly am I coming from? Why am I feeling that hurt? Why am I feeling that lack of motivation? Because you might equally say, I feel depressed. Depression can be a very wide term. So I hope I've responded to you. Yes, Catherine, I can see. Yes, you can self-regulate by pausing. But now, how do you pause? How do you pause? Most people will ask, how do I pause? I've been caught in the moment. How do I pause? First and foremost, we could do something very simple. If you're next to something like a bottle or a glass of water, sip. By the time you swallow that sip, you've practically thought of a better response to give this person. If you're not able to speak, you could always communicate and say, just a minute, I need some time to speak, or I'm not in the right frame of mind. You could also accept, you need to also accept the feeling that the emotion that you have, because sometimes we tend to hide behind and then also try to find superstitions like, leo kuna kitu itafanyika, I am feeling nimebabaika, but we need to accept, like, yes, this is what I am feeling. Then again, we also need to, through therapy, you could also understand self better. When you understand yourself, then you're more intentional about your reaction and your interactions with people. Then, we also look at things like triggers. Sometimes your trigger could be as simple as not being in the right frame of mind. Some of us, if you're sick, that could be a moment that you're prone to be emotional or have your emotions everywhere. If you are experiencing something from the external, such as maybe the death of a loved one, or something has just happened and it's a crisis, that could also put you in a different situation. But there are certain triggers that you could also look into. First and foremost being you as an individual and the person that you're interacting with, or the situation puts you in such a situation. Yeah.
If you are next to a bottle of beer,
Okay, I wouldn't advocate for people who use beer. And again, this is coming from the point where I deal with people with drugs and substance use issues, because one, you see, alcohol is actually a depressant, naturally a depressant. So if you're using, you've seen people who drink, they were very happy, and then before the end of the night they are crying and complaining and everything. So that just shows you how much of a depressant it is. Secondly, it also alters your judgment. So you might take a beer, and then I might take a beer and then come and bash you with the bottle on your head. Have I actually solved the problem or magnified it?
okay. Now, thinking about that,
Yes.
I don't know, but I think I've seen people or I've heard people who say, for example, the people who smoke, when they are stressed or trying to think about something, then they go smoking and they say, I'm smoking to think, or something like that.
Yes.
How does it relate? And is that related to substance abuse? Does it affect them negatively in any way? Does it, oh, is it better to use that than to be stressed and depressed? I'm asking for people.
For a friend.
Yes, I don't smoke. I don't drink. I only drink water.
It is very important. So first and foremost, any drug of choice. By drug of choice, I mean a cigarette, marijuana, alcohol, and every other drug that we could think of, including a cat. And cat, for those who don't know, is mira. So anything you use at first, You remember I mentioned something called self-medicating. At first, you will take it, and people say they feel functional. Or for smokers, they say, kichwa inakimbia sana, but nikitumia inapunguza. What happens is the drug might do that for now. But as you take it long term, it becomes different, because whatever amount you are using at that moment, if I was smoking half a cigarette stick, by tomorrow or a week later, I'll be finishing the whole stick or a whole packet. Is that really a viable solution? No, because the only thing I'll have done is be hooked to it, similar to people who take wine. You'll hear them say, when I take some wine, I'll sleep better. But what happens is the quantity increases with time. Why? Because the brain, you see, the normal functioning of a brain, I want you to understand, ni kama kuna mahali unakumbuka the seesaw, ikiwa straight, that's when you're not using anything. But then when you introduce a drug, it spikes your levels. So today you've used, it has spiked your level. Tomorrow it has spiked, but by the time you're coming back, ikiisha kwa system, it doesn't go back to the normal. It goes lower. That's why you hear people talking of hangovers and all those. So what happens is the brain inakuwa imechanganikiwa, and it can't go back to its state of equilibrium, for lack of a better term. So it's everywhere. And that's why we start developing mental health issues, such as clinical depression. People who have bipolar, you've had, it's taking us to every extreme. So you find you wouldn't get to a normal state without actually going through rehabilitation, which means you might need medication and psychotherapy all at once so that you can be able to balance.
Thank you, Ivy. Now, another question. Is there a relationship between water intake or nutrition, the diet that somebody takes, and the mental health issues like depression and all that?
Yes. It's the same as if right now it's raining and I tell you to walk with your vest and shorts, your body will be very uncomfortable. True or false? Umundi?
Are you speaking?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes. You're saying if it's raining and...
If it's raining right now, it's very cold, right? And I asked you to walk with your vest and shorts. Your body will be very uncomfortable. And you might get to a point where you might have even something like hypothermia.
So I don't know what that is.
It's a state where your body becomes extremely cold, and some people die because of that, yeah? So the body, water is life to start with. They say 70% of our body is water. So imagine a situation where you've lessened that. It's similar to lessening the amount of clothes when it's cold. Yeah. Then again, there's the nutrition. The nutrition bit consists of bodybuilding. Yeah. There's the carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and proteins. Yeah. Each of these things has a specific function. So assuming I haven't taken bodybuilding foods, but ndio mimi hapo nimeshinda siku mzima nikizunguka, my body is fatigued. It needs something to rejuvenate itself. There's food that is responsible for regenerating parts of us that have worn and that have suffered from wear and tear. So generally, if your body is not okay, there's no way your brain will be okay, because your brain is now focused on different things. But once you have a well-balanced meal, once you have enough intake of water, then you've basically just rejuvenated your body. You've given it enough energy and taken care of it. It's part of self-care.
Thank you. There is a question from Monica Ngigi. I have a relative whose feet get swollen at school, but no disease has been diagnosed, but she is well at home. What is this? I don't know whether that is related to this or it's general
I would
consultation.
be wrong to respond to that particular question, but maybe I could twist it and say there are children who actually suffer from headaches that cannot be explained. Yeah, there are children who have actually even suffered from asthmatic attacks, but when they go to hospital, doctors say there's no asthma. But this child was wheezing to the point where they could even die. There are children who faint. They faint constantly, they faint. Nato ukimchuna, they won't respond. Yeah. So when they go through therapy, you realize that these children actually suffer from psychological issues that are manifesting in that manner. So yes, there are so many people who go to hospital, but they come out with a clean bill of health, and we keep on using money, spending money to go and get treatment that no doctor is finding a solution to. So there are psychological issues that lead to medical symptoms, but are not treatable through medical channels.
Or maybe there is something happening in school. They dislike school in their mind.
Yes, and even as they dislike school, it still goes to the
It
underlying.
suppresses it's the mind. Okay.
Why is the child not liking school? Do they go back home and get bashed because they didn't perform as they were expected to? Are they being bullied at school? There are so many factors that would make a child not want to go to school. So having the right platform to identify what exactly is disturbing this child would be the first step towards helping them recover.
Great.
Yes.
Any other question as we close? We have just a few minutes left. Or comment? Dr. Irene, would you like to say something?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks a lot, Ivy, for the presentation. And I think even Catherine talked about it when she was talking about self-regulation. My point, just more or less to add on to the same point, is to find ways of addressing your emotions, both negative and positive. It starts from a point of being aware. You'd have to know who you are. You'd have to know what makes you happy, what makes you sad, for you to be able to address how to deal with the emotions as they present themselves. And something that I'm a firm believer in cognitive therapy. So our thoughts really, really influence how our emotions are going to interplay. Because from the example you'd given at the beginning, two ladies get a promotion, and one interprets it as progress, the other one interprets it with anxiety. So it's just, once you're able to understand your thoughts and sit back and analyze, okay, why is it that when this happens, I end up responding or rather reacting like this? And an easy way to remember to pull back or to slow down is there's this narrative where we say we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we learn to listen more and speak less. That way you're able to have time to actually think through the process. Yes, once we are aware, once we are able to sit back and calculate, I like the idea of sipping a glass of water, because that slows you down from just speaking whatever it is that comes to your mind. You get a chance to think through it. And again, thanks a lot for talking about this. We need to raise as much awareness as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Ivy, you talked about sleep. If somebody has starts sleeping, then wakes up, and then tries to look for sleep, maybe from 3 a.m. There is no sleep, maybe up to morning hours. How do you explain that? Is it something that needs psychologist, whatever?
Sometimes it might need therapeutic interventions, but then it's something you could also do from the comfort of your home. One, we talked about the breathing exercise, because remember, we are not sleeping because our brain has not come to that point of stillness to relax and now let the body sleep. Yeah. But then again, there's also the issue of sometimes we've just not done anything the whole day. I woke up, sat on my desk, came back. There's nothing per se that I have done physically engaging. So you'd find that having a bit of exercise before you go to bed would also help, because you'll make your body a bit fatigued so that you can sleep. Again, there's also something we call meditation. Meditating through the day. How was my day? Did I perform as per my expectations? Is there something I need to do better? So when you get all those things written down, or even journaling, you write all your thoughts down, it could go a long way. Sometimes you just can't sleep because maybe someone offended you and you're really, really upset. Talking about it with someone else could also go a long.
Thank you very much.
On
Thank
call?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else has a comment. It's 3 minutes to 10. We always end by 10, but I do not want to deny anyone a chance who would like to comment. There is some, there are Bible verses being put there by Mukami Mwingai, and people appreciating very good presentation. Maybe at this point, I will want to, one of us here is Noel. I would love to invite Noel to maybe give a vote of thanks and then pray for us as we go. Noel, I hope you are able to do that. Is Noel still here? Seems like she. Noel, yes.
I am so. I am here. Thank you so much to Madam Speaker for the insightful conversation that we have had. It was so simple, clear, and to the point. We really appreciate that you took your time just to come and speak to us and be with us as the board.